the one, the only, Ben Sion.
Good evening and welcome to this Motzei Shabbos edition of Just Daf It. As we continue with Gittin, Daf Ayin Daled tonight, number 74. Let's start from the bottom, Ayin Gimel Beis. The last three lines. Tanu Rabbanan, Yomim Shebein Tayim, those days in between. We talked in the previous Mishnah that if you say to a woman, you stipulate in the Gerushin or Gresha Ma'ayom L'achar Misa. You say from today or L'achar Misa. It's sort of conflicting language. Does it mean Ma'ayom or it means L'achar Misa? So there's different opinions. We'll see. There's four opinions in this price of what is her status during those days, right? Before he actually dies, right? She's right. Some opinions say that retroactively the get takes effect, right? So what's her dinim for other halachas during that interval? So by the Tanakh says by l'zakab and siyas of ma'aseh when he's married, a husband is married to a woman, he gets anything she finds belongs to the husband. Any wages she earns belong to the husband. And if she makes a neder, he can be made for the neder of a yarsha. He also inherits. If she dies before him, so he inherits her matamila. And if she dies, he could also bury her. He has a mitzvah to bury her, and if he's a kohen, he's allowed to bury her. Rabbiuda's opinion is that, right, basically, that she's married and the get takes effect, right? But it takes effect 1 second when he died. It takes effect 1 second before he died. Or anytime you say ma'achshav, right? You don't say ma'achshav. You say it's clear that the get was supposed to take before you died, but when does it take effect? So according to Yehuda, it takes effect a second before you die. So therefore, the rest of those days, even though he died, she was married to him. Rabbi Meir says during those days, her bia, meaning if she's together with another man, it's dependent on what happens if the man actually dies or he doesn't die. Rabbi Yossi says her bi'ila, if she commits quote unquote adultery during that time, it's a suffix. The Chachamim say, like we saw in the Mishnah, they say when it's about Yom L'achar Misa, she's sort of a suffix gerushin. That's the way of phrasing it. Megureshes, she's divorced, but she's not divorced. Provided that the Tanai happens and he actually dies. So the Gemara tries to distinguish between these last three opinions. Ma'ika bein Reb Meir and Reb Yossi. What's the difference between Reb Meir, the second opinion, Reb Yossi? Amar Reb Yochanan Asham Talei Yigaminai. Reb Meir lo Ma'isi Asham Talei. Reb Yossi Ma'isi Asham Talei. According to Reb Meir, he says Bilas is Tluya, right? It depends on what happens with the husband. If the husband ends up dying, right? So then if she cohabited with another man, it's not a problem because the get took effect ma'achshav when he gave it to her. Right when he gave it to her, 6 months before he died, he gave it to her. So then she was together with another man afterwards. It doesn't make a difference anymore because she was divorced as long as it happened. But it doesn't happen. He doesn't actually die. Then she's chayav achatas for committing adultery if she did it b'shogeg, and she'd be chayav chenek if she did it on purpose. But according to Rabbi Yossi, ma'isi asham tole. According to Rabbi Yossi, you have to bring an Asham Taloi. According to Rabbi Yossi, we're not sure. Does the Gerushin take effect a second before he died, or does it take effect 6 months before? So therefore, if she cohabits with another man, we're not sure if she was divorced or not. Therefore, you should bring an Asham Taloi, which is brought whenever you're suffix, whether you should bring a Charban Chatas or not. So the Gemara notes Chacham behind Rabbi Yossi. If that's the case, Chacham are the exact opinion of Rabbi Yossi. Ikabenayu the Reb Zeir. The Gemara says the nafkamina between them. So the Gemara says Ikabenayu the Reb Zeira. The nafkim between the Chacham and Rabbi Yossi is the shita of Reb Zeira. What Reb Zeira said. Amar Reb Zeira, Amar Rav Yemi, Amar Shmuel. Kol makom shamru Chacham miguresh ve'en miguresh is ba'il chayav mitzvah sal. Anytime there's a suffix gerushin, right? According to Rabbi Yossi and the Chacham, they both essentially agree. When you say ma'ayom l'achar misa, did a gerushin and he dies, does the gerushin take effect 6 months before he died when he gave the get, or does it take effect a second before he died? So it's a suffix during that time. The nafkamina is, according to the Chamim, during those 6 months, he's chayav to pay for her nutrition, her nourishment. And according to Rabbi Yossi, he holds he's not chayav. He would disagree on Rabbi Zeira. The Mishnah says, Areza gite zuz. He says to his wife, this is your get, on condition that you give me 200 zuz. Right? It might get hard for his wife. Men hold out the get, because, again, only the man can give the get. The woman can't force the man to give a get. So we'll say maybe more than 200 zuz. You give me $10,000, only I'll give you a get. He makes some crazy stipulation. Hareza Megureshes. She is Megureshes. V'titain. The Gemara will explain what this means. V'titain. She has to fulfill the tonight. Obviously, she has to fulfill it tonight. But when is the gerushin happen? When she gives the money, or does it happen when she gives the money? It happens retroactively. As machlokas in the Gemara. Shetitni limasayim zuz. Hareza Megureshes. Sorry. V'titain. If he says you're Megureshes on condition that you give me the money within 30 days, if she gave it to him within 30 days, the gerushin takes effect. If she didn't fulfill the condition, she gave it to him on day 31, it doesn't take effect. Shimon Gamliel said, there was an incident in Sidon. His wife was holding his silk cloak back from him. And I'm only going to megarish you on the condition you give me back my silk cloak. But Abda is Talisa. And after they agreed to the gerushin and she was going to give it back to him, she lost it. Chacham said she could still be divorced as long as she gives him the value of the silk cloak. The Gemara says, "My v'titain." What does it mean? And she should give it. Rav Huna Amar v'hi titain. Rav Huna says, when you say I'm megarish you, I'm asked that you're going to give me 200 zuz, when she gives it, it happens retroactively. That's the opinion of Rav Huna. It happens retroactively. Rav Huna Amar Likshetite. Rav Yehuda says the gerushin happens once she gives it. Once she gives the money, if she gave it 2 years later, the gerushin only happens 2 years later. So obviously, a lot of nafkaminas. One of the nafkaminas is kara hagero sha'ava. Let's say in between, in the interim, between the 2 years between when he actually gave the get and she actually gave him the money, the get was ripped up. Right? It has to be extant. If it's not extant, it's not a get. O sha'ava is lost. She has to be holding it. She has to be in her possession. Rav Huna Amar v'hitite. Rav Huna says once she gives him the money, the gerushin basically essentially happened according to Rav Huna already 2 years earlier. It's just we're waiting for something else to happen, a stipulation to happen. Once that stipulation happens, the gerushin takes effect retroactively. So the Ma'aseh and the Sina happened 2 years ago. So it's a good gerushin. Rav Yehuda Amar Lichshtita and Stricham get sheni. She needed a new get because the gerushin only takes effect when she gives the money. V'snan nami, we had the same machlokas gabe kiddushin and k'agab. The Snan, the Mishnah says in Mesechus kiddushin, Omer liisha reim gudeshli. Amnah she'etein lecha matayim zuz. I'm a kadishu, right? When you're kadishu, when you're going to give her a present, right? When you're a garisher, you want her to give you the money because you can hold it against kedushin. She has to agree to it, right? So amnah she'etein lecha matayim zuz. Arehi mikudeshes v'yitin. Once he gives her the money, she's mekudeshes. Assuming she agrees to it, and he gives her the money. Then the kedushin happens. V'yitain. She's mekudeshes, and he'll give it. V'itmar my v'yitain. What does it mean v'yitain? Or put on mar v'hu yitain. He has to give it. Once he gives it, retroactively, the kedushin happens from whenever he did the kedushin. He gave her the money for the kedushin. He gave her the ring. Rav Yehuda Amar lichshiyitain. Rav Yehuda says no. The kedushin only takes effect when he actually gives her the money. Same machlokas they have by gerushin. My beinai. What's the difference between Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda by Kiddushin? Let's say in the interim, he promised, I'll Makadish you, I'll promise you, I'll give you $200. And then in the interim, someone else Makadish her. Right? Essentially, they're Mikudeshes, right? All that needs to happen is he has to fill the time, giving her the money. And she was Makadish, she accepted Kiddush from someone else. It's ineffective because essentially the Kiddush already happened already. We're just waiting for the stipulation to check off the stipulation. Rabbi Yehuda Amar l'chshiyitein l'chi yayiv la hu have a kedushin hash lo have a kedushin. The kedushin doesn't take effect until when he gives it. So therefore, she's makabel kedushin for someone else. She's mekudeshes to that person, and she can no longer a woman can't be mekudeshes to two people at the same time. So therefore, she's mekudeshes to the second person. The first one lost out. The Sricha. We have to say the Machlokas, Rav Huna and Rav Yehuda in both cases, both by Gerushin and Kiddushin. The Gemara will elaborate this extensively. The Yashmin and Gabi Kiddushin, if we just had Rav Huna's statement by Kiddushin, B'hakamar Rav Huna, V'huyite, Mishum de l'kruva kasi. Rav Huna says there, V'huyite, basically the Kiddushin took effect. He just has to give the money, and it takes effect retroactively. Because there he wants to bring her closer to him. He wants to distance her from himself. All right, maybe he'll say, I only want the gerushin to take effect later on. Maybe he still wants to be married to her, right? He's sending her away, so maybe he still wants to remain married to her as long as possible. Kedushin, he wants to happen this right away. If he said about gerushin, hakamar Rav Huna, that's Rav Huna makes sense. Rav Huna would say, "V'hu titain, v'hi titain." It happens right away, retroactively. Mishum de lo kasef lemitba. Because a man, when he's married to his wife, he's not embarrassed to ask money from her. So therefore, essentially, he wanted the gerushin to take retroactively, right? Because when he asked for the money, he could have asked for it right now. So therefore, it's basically he wanted to take it right now. Aval gabe kedushin neksifa lemitba. Kedushin, she's embarrassed to ask him for money. They're not even married yet, right? Ema mode, we would say that you have to wait till he actually gives them money for Kedushin to take effect. If we just said by Kedushin, Bahakam Rav Yehuda, there Rav Yehuda says, Gittin. It only takes effect when he gives the money. Mishum deksifa lemitbe, because again, she is embarrassed to ask the money. He's not embarrassed to ask it from her. Ema mode, Rav Yehuda, he would say, agree to Rav Yehuda, it takes effect right now. If we only knew Rav Yehuda's teaching by gerushin, there it makes sense that it takes effect later because he's sending her away. Maybe he still wants to be married to her. He wants her to be married right away. I would say agrees to Rav Huna. It takes effect retroactively. Therefore, it has to say this machlokas in both cases. Meisive, the Gemara has a question from Rav Brisa on Rav Yehuda. Here's your get. On condition you give me 200 zuz, exactly the case around Mishnah. Even though in the interim, before he gave the money, she gave him the money, the get got ripped up or got lost. The gerushin takes effect when she gives him the money. The Brisa gives advice to her, she should not marry someone else until she gives the money. Because if she ends up marrying someone else and being together with them and having children, right, and she doesn't end up giving the money, that's mamzerim because she was never divorced. Though Tanya, another Bryce is here I'm megarish you on condition you give me 200 zuz, and the husband ended up dying before she gave it. Nasna and if she gave the money before he died, so then it was a gerushin. She's not obligated in yibum. There's no zika. Lo nasna if she didn't give it, it's kukul yavam. The gerushin didn't take effect. It only takes effect later because she didn't give the money. If she didn't give the money, so the gerushin never, the tanai was not accomplished. The stipulation never accomplished, and she has to do yibam or chalitza. Even if he died, she can give it to his father or to his brother or one of his relatives, anyone who is yoreshim, anyone who inherits him. So the Gemara zakan lo pligi, the machlokas between Shmuel and the Rabbanan in this brayse, ella the mar savar leave lo liyarshi, mar savar leave afilo liyarsha. When a person says, "Give me 200 zuz," did he mean only to me, but not to my inheritors, or me includes even my inheritors? And that's what Shmuel says. Even my inheritors are okay, so therefore she fulfills the Tanai once she does it. And then retroactively, the gerushin should happen while he was still alive, right? Only according to Rav Huna can you say that. Everyone agrees that it's a Tanai, and retroactively, if it is fulfilled, the gerushin would happen retroactively and he was still alive. Tiyufti de Rav Huda. We have a question of Rav Huda from both of these brises. Amalkar Rav Huda. Rav Huda would answer, Hamani Rebbe. These brises reflect the opinion of Rebbe. The Amar of Huda Amar Rebbe, call Omer Almanas, call Omer Ma'achshav. Anytime you say Almanas, the word Almanas on condition, it's like saying Ma'achshav. Ma'achshav is very strong. When I say Amagarishu Ma'achshav from now, it may see, like we had in the previous mission, if I die, so Ma'achshav is very clear. You want the gerushin to take effect retroactively. Almanas is sort of ambiguous, right? On condition, do I want the gerushin to take effect when you give the money, or maybe retroactively? So Rebbe says, saying Almanas is the equivalent of Kamachshav Dam. And we pass like this, and I'll explain this more fully in Iyun Ben Sio and how Tanoim really work. Upligi Rabbanan all that. However, Rav Yehuda says that Rabbanan argue on Rebbe and say Almanas is not like say Ma'ashav Dami, and therefore Almanas, the gerushin only happens when it's given. When the money is given, it only happens then, not retroactively. Ana Damri Karabanan. I hold like the Rabbanan. Amar Rab Zera says, he adds in, Kavina Bavel, we're in Bavel, I'm reading Had Amar of Hun Amar Rebbe, Kol Omer Almanas, Kol Omer Ma'ashav Dami, Pligi Rabbanan al. We assumed, like Rav Yehuda said over here, the Rabbanan argued on Rebbe and say Almanas is not like Ma'ashav Dami. Kisliki, when we went to Eretz Yisrael, Ashkachise Rav Yasi, the Yosef Gomer Mishmei Rav Yochanan, we found Rav Asi who was sitting and said in the name of Rabbi Yochanan, "Kol modim ba'omer almanas, kol omer ma'achshav." I mean, everyone agrees. Even the Rabbanan agree. When you say almanas, it's like saying ma'achshav. Lo nechliku elav ma'yom ulachar misa. They only argue about a different case. When, let's say, you make a gerish and you say arei megureshes ma'yom ulachar misa. You said it's ambiguous, right? That you mean that it should be chal retroactively or after misa, and you can't be megarish after misa. Tanya, and to support this, top of Ayin Dalam and Beis, a Brisa says, "Ma'yom alachar misa get beino get divrei chamim," which essentially we saw in one of the previous Mishnayos, right? According to the Rabbanan, it's a Safek Gerish. And Rabbi Omer kazeh get. Rabbi says no. It's clear he means when he says Ma'yom alachar misa, it's like he said ma'achshav. So the Gemara says, "Rabbi Yehuda da'amar ba'almanas pligi." According to Rabbi Yehuda, right? That was only in Eretz Yisrael. In Eretz Yisrael, everyone agreed that when you say almanas, it's like saying kama'achshav dami. But we go like Bavel, and Rabbi Yehuda lived in Bavel, so he assumed that Rabbanan say almanas is not like saying kama'achshav dami. That's the source of his opinion. Well, Rabbi Yehuda da'amar ba'almanas pligi, that they're arguing almanas, the Rabbanan argue almanas. They don't say almanas is like kama'achshav dami. Ad miflagi b'ma'yom alachar misa, liflagi ba'almanas. Why don't they argue almanas? Lo dicha kocho the Rebbe. Teach you the strength of Rebbe, right? That Rebbe says, even in a case where you say almanas, which is not a really clear language. If you say ma'yom alachar misa, it's a little clearer. You said ma'yom, so it sounds retroactively. Almanas doesn't sound retroactive at all. Teach me, Rebbe says, that's almanas. So the Gemara says, let's get almanas. The Gemara says, sorry, this is the answer. Lodiacha kocha the Rebbe. The reason it talks about this case is to teach you Rebbe's opinion. Teach you Rebbe's opinion that even in the case of ma'yom ulachar misa, it works retroactively. I said a little, actually, the wrong. Almanas is more likely that it happens retroactively. Even in the case of ma'yom ulachar misa, where you mentioned both today and after misa, we say ma'achshav. So the Gemara questions, why didn't they argue about almanas and teach you the koach of the Rabbanan? The Rabbanan say always, whether you say ma'yom ulachar misa or you say almanas, it happens afterwards. Or at least it's a suffix. The Gemara says koach de'atera adiflei. It's more important to teach me that the heter, the koach of heter, and therefore we teach it in the case of ma'yom alachar misa to tell you. Even in that case, Rebbe would say ma'achshav is like you said ma'achshav, and kol shekain in the case where he says almanas is like ma'achshav dam. Almanas shetitid leim v'kan ve'ashloshim yom. Mishnah says if you make a stipulation and you say you're migureshes on condition that you give me the money from now until 30 days. If she gives it within 30 days, the gerushin happens. If she gives it on day 31, the gerushin does not take effect. The Gemara says, pshita, that's obvious. She didn't fulfill it tonight. Mao the same, kapeda, love kapeda. Well, zarzakasi. Maybe he really didn't care about 30 days. He just wanted her to give the money right away. And really, he didn't mean literally 30 days. Kamash b'la, no, his language was 30 days, so therefore he has to be done within 30 days. Amar Shimon Gamliel, Ma'aseh b'sidan. The Gemara quotes an incident, or Shimon Gamliel quotes. So the Gemara says, "My Tana the Katani Ma'aseh." It teaches a case, right? When the Mishnah introduces a case, an incident which happened, it usually to confirm a ruling in the Mishnah. The Mishnah didn't teach anything about fulfilling a Tanai with giving an equivalent, right? He demanded a cloak, he demanded his frock coat back, and she gave money. So, Man Tana the Katani Ma'aseh. The Gemara says, really, the Mishnah is missing words. This is what it means to say. If he says to her, I'm megarish you on condition you give me back my silk coat or my frock coat, and she lost it. So according to the Rabbanan, you can't. The gerushin doesn't take effect. He wanted the coat back. He never got the coat back, so the gerushin doesn't take effect. Shmuel argues and says, "Titain lo es dameh." Even though she doesn't have the cloak, she can give him the value of it. The Amar Shmuel Ma'asenam b'sidan be'echad shamar liishta reiza gitech onash titin le'istalisi. V'avda yitzalisa v'amru cham titin lo es dameh. The Chum said, just give her the equivalent. So that's why the Mishnah is including a story to back up the opinion of Rosh Gamliel. And Bamir Rasi and Rabbi Yochanan. Rasi asked Rabbi Yochanan, "Hareza gitech onash titin le'matayim zuz. V'chazer v'amru la mechulim la." He makes a stipulation like our Mishnah. I want 200 zuz. And then he goes ahead, instead of the previous case where he gave it equivalency, he says, I'm mochel, I don't need the money anymore. Mahu. What's the halacha? Is it a gerushin or not? You could ask this question both according to the opinion of the Rabbanan, who said before that you have to dafka give the coat back. According to Rabbi Gamliel, he'll give the equivalent. Adkan l'kam Rabbanan hasam elad lo ach lagaba. Aval hacha haka amar la mechulim lach. Right? According to Rabbanan, he asked for a coat back, his frock coat back, and she didn't give it. So he wants his frock coat back. But if he says he's mochel, then maybe the Rabbanan would agree that it'll be okay because he doesn't need it anymore. Odilma afilu Hashem Lil Kamar Ella Dekam Mafaisale Bidami. You can say you could ask the question according to Hashem Lil also. He wanted a coat back, and she's giving him money. Avalagamre lo, but we'll see as the Gemara explains, when he says he wants something back before he wants the Gersh to take effect, he wants money, he wants his coat back. The Gemara, it's clear he's doing litzaura. He wants to cause her pain, right? He's upset about the divorce. He wants to cause her pain. So he asks for something in return. So maybe the fact that he's mochel doesn't help. So when you gave the money, Hashem says it's okay because money is the equivalent. He can go buy a new coat with the money. Aval gamre lo, but when he's mochel, maybe the mechila doesn't help. Now it's hard to understand why the mechila wouldn't help. If he's mochel, it means he doesn't want the money anymore. So why shouldn't it work? I'll explain this further in Iyad Ben Sion about how Tanai, the concept of a Tanai really works. So the Gemara said, Rabbi Yochanan's answer is Amar le'enam garesha. So he says, Rabbi Yochanan answered back, the halacha is that if he's mochel, the gerush does not take effect, which is the halacha. Esivei. It's a question from Abraisa. Omer lechaveiro konam she'ata neneli. Im iyata nosin lebni kur echad shel chitin v'shei chavai shel yayin. This is a Mishnah in Maseches Nadar. He says to his friend that I'm answering you, forbidding you from getting hana from me, unless he was upset that he did a favor for him and he's not getting anything in return. So he said, you have to give my son a box of wheat and 2 barrels of wine. Rameir Omer Asar Ashita. Rameir says the nether takes effect until he actually fulfills the stipulation and gives it to his son. The Chum say as long as the person says, you know what, I don't need it anymore. He says, I insist on it. I don't need it anymore. So the nether is batel. It took effect, but now it's batel because it was only dependent on his desire for these items. Now he doesn't want them anymore, so it's okay. So you see over what? When you're mochel, he was mochel over here, so it works. It abrogates the nether. So why shouldn't the same thing by gerushin? So the Gemara distinguishes Haki Hasha Hasam Litzura Kamachava. And here by gerushin, he's asking for money or he's asking for a coat because he wants to cause her pain. Vilot Tzira. And when he's mochel on these things, she's not paying, she doesn't lose anything. Hacha Mishum Harvachaho. However, in the case of the Darim, he was doing it that he's doing business with them. Basically, it's a business interest essentially. He felt he did him a favor in business, he wants something back. The halo itzarich, and now he's saying he doesn't need it. So his mochel, his mechila is a good mechila. I'll explain this further in Iyad Ben Sion. Oh Gavra, the Amar Leila Arise. There was a story. A man said to his sharecropper, "Kule alma dalu tlas dalvasa, va'achli riva." Normally, the way it works here in Bavel is that sharecroppers take the arduous work of irrigating the field 3 times a year, and in payment they get 1/4 of the crops. I want you to irrigate my field more. It needs a little more irrigation. You irrigate it 4 times, and instead of getting 1/4, they get 1/3. L'sof asa mitra. At the end, it happened to rain a lot that year, so he didn't have to water. There was no necessity to water it a 4th time. Amar Rav Yosef halo dala. Yosef says he didn't irrigate it a 4th time, so he's not entitled to the 1/3. He can only get a 4th. Rabba Amar halo itzracha. It is not needed. So what's he supposed to do? He's still entitled to a 1/3. So the Gemara says, Lemer Rav Yosef Damar Karabban and Rabba the Amar Shem Gamliel. Say they're arguing, Rav Yosef and Rabba, about the machlokas Rabban and Shem Gamliel. Rabban and Shem Gamliel are machlokas. Right? We saw their machlokas is not stated explicitly in the Mishnah, but the Gemara explained their machlokas. Right? If he says, I'm a garish you, that you give me to Masayim Zuz, right? Can you give something else? So according to the Rabbanan, no. Rav Yosef says no, it's not fulfilled. According to Shem Gamliel, you can give the value of the coat. So here also, it rains. So the Gemara said, is this possible? We pass him like Rabba instead of Rav Yosef. Right? Basically, that he's entitled to a full 1/3. We don't pass like Shem Gamliel. So you can't say we pass in Rabba holds like Shem Gamliel. Really, it's like the Rabbanan. Rav Yosef K'Rabbanan. Rav Yosef makes sense like the Rabbanan, right? He didn't get what he asked for, and therefore he's not entitled to the extra third, to the third. He's only entitled to a fourth. Rabba says I can even coexist with the opinion of the Rabbanan. My Gershon is different. He intends to cause her pain. Here it's simply a business interest. When it's a business interest, so therefore the negotiation was that he really wanted his field to be irrigated properly, and it was irrigated properly. So therefore he's entitled to take the full third. Obviously the Gemara makes a distinction between Gerushin and business and Dinei Mamonis. I'll talk more about that in Iyot Ben Sion, and I'll try to explain this concept. Normally we're accustomed, Maseches Kedushin talks about the concept of Tanoim. And it lists, you need like 5 or 6 different ways that for a Tanai to work, it has to have like, it's called Mishpatei HaTanoim, the Gemara Paskins like that over there, Maseches Kedushin, I believe in Daf Samach Aleph, which basically a lot of rules. You have to repeat the Tanai, you have to say it B'la B'hein, you have to Tanai Kodem L'maisa, a lot of different stipulations. Here, it doesn't say that anywhere else in Shas. A lot of times it doesn't say that in Shas. I'll try to reconcile that Mishnah with our Gemara over here and explain the concept of L'tzura Kamachavein, Iyot Ben Sion, coming up next.